Good morning, all. How are we today? I've actually just asked you how you all are, and I realized that you will all have your cameras off and will be muted, so you cannot respond. But I hope you're all well, and thanks for joining the webinar today. We're just going to wait till a few more join before we kick off. But yeah. Okay, it looks like we have about 60 people and we've got quite a full agenda today, so I might get started and people can kind of filter in as we get going. So good morning. Thank you for joining our customer webinar today for hotels. My name's Jess and I'll be leading this morning's webinar. The NABERS hotel sector has been growing quite quickly over the past few years, and we wanted to host this webinar to kind of round up recent hotel info and updates from a NABERS side, but more importantly, use it as an opportunity to hear from some key industry stakeholders. So yeah, we're really glad you could join today, and we hope you find it helpful. So I want to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. So today I'm joining from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, so in Sydney, and it's a place I'm really, really lucky to call home. So yeah, and if you're dialing in from other Aboriginal lands, I invite you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that you're on as well. So a few housekeeping things. You'll notice that your mic has been muted and your camera has been turned off. We have done this purposefully to make sure the session runs quite smoothly. So if you do have questions throughout the session, firstly, we will have a dedicated Q&A section at the very end. However, if you have any questions during any of the presentations, please don't hesitate to use that Q&A function and add your questions in there. So I'm going to quickly go through the agenda. We're going to start off with a welcome from the Director of NABERS, Magali. From there, I'm going to be giving you a few updates on the NABERS Hotel, what's been happening and what's coming up next. And then we're going to get into the main event, which we'll be hearing from our industry stakeholders. So first, we'll have a deep dive from Dr. Kaushik Sridhar on positioning and communicating sustainability as a business advantage, which will be really, really interesting. And then following that, we'll be having a case study where we'll be looking at operational improvements and sustainability outcomes in a hotel in Melbourne, and that will be from Diana Rico-Roa from ESG, and then we also have David Young from Accor and Mel Maio from the Novotel and Ibis Melbourne Central. Then we've got the Q&A at the end and some final words. So I'm going to kick off the meeting and pass over to Magali.
Thanks so much, Jess. Great to see so many people joining us this morning. Thanks for making time today. I am Magali Wardle. I'm the Acting Director of NABERS. I won't speak for too long because we have a great lineup of topics to get through. So if we go to the next slide, please, Jess. So the first thing I just want to touch on is our annual report, which we just published last month, and it's packed with insights on NABERS and the buildings that we rate. This year we had a focus on electrification, including a couple of case studies that show how that electrification conversation is really moving from theory to practice. You know, it's changing rapidly, which is great to see. I'm also going to go through some high-level insights on hotels from the annual report. And the team's actually going to put the link to the annual report so you can explore it yourself. So I think the first thing I want to say is that hotels were really the heroes last financial year. So we had our hotel rating numbers going up by 40%. As of last financial year, hotels now have a dedicated section in our Sustainable Portfolios Index. So last year we saw 20 hotels joining for the first time. And Jess is actually going to talk about how to get involved with next year's Sustainable Portfolios Index. NABERS hotel ratings are also now visible on Google Travel with an Eco certified tag, and they're recognized by Travelist's Global Sustainability Platform. So diving into the hotel's dashboard from the annual report, the first thing that we see is that NABERS has been rating hotels since FY12. So we're up to about 13 years now. So that top left chart shows the steady trajectory of energy ratings since launch, with a really sharp acceleration in recent years. The bottom chart highlights actual numbers. So last year we saw our biggest leap yet, from 90 to 133 hotels. So that's that 40% increase that I mentioned before. And it's not just hotels overall. We've also seen a significant increase in the number of guest rooms that are being rated. So that means we're seeing an increase in bigger hotels receiving NABERS ratings. So since last year, certified rooms jumped over 30%, from about 23,000 to 31,000. So yeah, great momentum in the hotel sector right now. Moving to the next slide. We've seen that strong growth in hotel ratings, but what does that mean in practice? So this chart's a really interesting one. It shows the real impact of continuous NABERS ratings on energy use. So you can see we have that blue line, which is our office sector, and the longest running sector. And that kind of trend that we've seen over like 12 years now demonstrates that power of regular measurement. So by their 10th rating, an office building typically reduces that average energy consumption by 30% or more. And that's actually world leading in terms of improvement rates. And then the next trend we have is the shopping centres. So even without a mandate, so we don't have any mandatory disclosure for shopping centres, we've seen a similar trend with shopping centres. So they're actually reaching that 30% savings in about 8 years. So they're going faster than the offices. And then we've now got enough data to show that trend for hotels as well. And that's really showing the most significant drops, with early adopters receiving the steepest declines in energy consumption. And these energy gains translate into not only improved sustainability performance, but actually big financial wins. So our modeling shows that improving a hotel from 3 NABERS stars to 5 stars could save you about almost $500,000 per year in energy and about $55,000 in water. So, we have this saying in NABERS that what gets measured gets managed. And I think this diagram is a really clear example of that. So I'm now going to hand over to Jess for more of a deep dive. And yeah, looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Jess.
Thanks, Magali. And yeah, nice to meet you all again. So my name's Jess Edmeades. I'm the acting sector lead for the hotel sector for NABERS, and I'm going to be providing a really quick update on what has happened in the NABERS hotel sector over the last 12 months, and then what is coming up next. So to start off, I guess what has happened in the last 12 months with NABERS, there are 3 kind of key things we wanted to highlight. The first one is we launched the first NABERS Sustainable Portfolio Index, or SPI, for hotels. So for those who don't know what the SPI is, the Sustainable Portfolio Index basically ranks building portfolios based on their NABERS ratings. I kind of like to think of it as a leaderboard for like the AFL or any other sports, but for buildings. So it shows property owners how sustainable their building portfolios are, but ranked against others. And so the portfolio ratings are based on calendar year, and they're calculated based on both rated and non-rated assets. So we've been doing the SPI for the last 7 years, and last year we introduced the first SPI for hotels. And we saw 3 portfolios receive ratings with 20 hotels across those portfolios. And we're now preparing for our second hotel SPI coming up shortly. So if you do have a portfolio of hotels that are receiving NABERS ratings and are interested, it is free to participate. So please reach out, because we would love some more people to join that. So next we have the sustainable tourism certifications and our collaboration with those. So this year we teamed up with some of those big names in sustainability certification for accommodation, hospitality and tourism industries. And you can see some of their logos on the right. So we have EarthCheck, Ecotourism Australia, and Green Key. And the goal of this project was to make it easier for hotels to meet multiple sustainability standards. So essentially, we looked at how NABERS hotel ratings can help actually tick some of those boxes for these other certifications. So now that these partnerships are official, we're looking at how we can jointly promote them, and you'll actually shortly be seeing the impact of one of these things. So with the NABERS hotel rating reports that each building receives, we'll be shortly adding in a note section at the end that explains how your NABERS rating aligns with EarthCheck, Ecotourism Australia, and Green Key. So if you are getting a NABERS rating in the next few months, take a look at that. We're also going to be sharing some case studies of hotels that have already been benefiting from this collaboration. So keep an eye out for those case studies as well. The other big thing that has happened in the last 12 months, so in the middle of last year, 2024, CBD had their public consultation for the proposed expansion of the CBD program. And then last month, so in October this year, the CBD expansion roadmap was released. And you can now find it on the CBD website. So the Commercial Building Disclosure or CBD program, the key things to note from their roadmap is that hotels have been identified for expansion and that larger hotels will likely be required to obtain a NABERS energy rating and to publish it publicly. But there is still a lot we don't know yet, and these details are still being finalized by the CBD team. So I guess the key messaging here is that hotels have been identified for expansion, but we're not 100% sure what that will look like yet. So moving on to next steps and what NABERS will be focusing over the next 12 months. Firstly, CBD expansion support. So following on from the announcement from the Commercial Building Disclosure team, this will be a key area we'll be focusing on over the next year. So the NABERS team are really committed to supporting the hotel sector. And while we don't have all the details of what the expansion will look like, it's really, really important to us that we're proactive and we actually get ready for any potential changes. So for us, that looks like how can we enhance our tools and services so we're actually servicing the hotel industry much better. And so over the coming year, we're hoping to work quite closely with the hotel sector and the industry to make sure that any changes we do make actually deliver real value for the hotel sector. And we're looking to collaborate really closely. The second area that we'll be focusing on is atypical hotels. So currently the hotel tool allows hotels to be, all hotels to be rated. However, we know it works best for typical hotels rather than atypical hotels. And some of those atypical hotels are listed on the right there. So what we'll be doing is basically looking at how we can work to make sure that we can guarantee that star rating and comparison for those atypical hotels. The last thing that we'll be working on is helping hotels get the most from NABERS. So we'll be explaining, essentially we've been doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, kind of collecting stakeholder feedback over the last few months and creating a repository. We've also done some work to create a hotel audience map. So understanding what matters most to different stakeholders in the hotel industry, what your priorities are, concerns, and any roadblocks, that kind of stuff. And the aim of this work is to pull together some kind of targeted fact sheets and case studies that actually help the industry. An example of this would be, we've heard that heritage hotels are an area of concern, and we think there's some work that we can do to kind of help educate building managers and owners on how you can actually improve your star rating, even if it is a heritage hotel. So we're going to be creating some case studies on that. That is a very quick run through of what is happening in NABERS, but now I'm going to pass over or get into, I guess, the main part of the event, and we're going to start off with Dr. Kaushik Sridhar from Orka Advisory, and he's going to be doing a deep dive on how to position and communicate sustainability. So I'm going to pass over to Kaushik.
Thank you, Jess. I'll just keep calling your name every time we need to change the slide. I hope that's okay. Perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see each and every one of you, although we can't really see your face. I can see there's a good representation from Accor and other hotels, so you've come to the right place. Per the kind introduction, my name is Dr. Kaushik Sridhar. Just call me Kaushik or K if you simply can't pronounce my name. And I'm the founder and CEO of Orka Advisory. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, NABERS. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Macarena. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for this really awesome invitation. I'm just going to spend about 20 minutes or so kind of exploring how sustainability isn't just a compliance exercise. It's actually more of a growth story. And I think the scene has been set really beautifully from NABERS. So just to kind of recap, NABERS is one of the most powerful, I would say, yet sometimes even often underused tools to really tell a story in many sectors, especially in the hotel sector. So I guess why I'm here today is to really talk about how we can sell sustainability with confidence, which equates to speaking the language of clients and organizations, not just kilowatt hours, not just liters of water, but also ROI, like return on investment, risk management, reputation. What I would love for you to take away from today is really that NABERS isn't just about stars on a wall. It's about profit. It's about performance, and equally, it's about proof. And when you communicate that really well, your NABERS rating starts becoming a very commercial differentiator, as already some stats have been presented previously, and it helps you win business. It helps you retain clients and helps you also reduce costs. And I guess another important note as part of the setting the scene process is you don't need to be necessarily a sustainability expert to sell this. I think the key thing is you've got to be able to connect the data to the value drivers that your customers or people in your value chain really care about. So yeah, that's part of hopefully setting the scene. So excited to dive in. I know I've introduced nothing about myself, and I'm more than happy to keep it that way. So we'll start with just the next slide, Jess, please. One of the most immediate and universal challenges facing hotels today, and that is around rising utility costs, and also this thing called regulation that seems to be tightening and annoying a few people here and there. Sorry, just kidding. I think it's amazing. So if you look at energy, if you look at water, you look at waste, these are no longer kind of background operating costs. They've become material financial risks. So in hotels, these costs have been creeping up, as you would know, year after year after year. And what's most striking is that they now make up quite a growing share of your total operating expenses. For example, I grew up in the United States. As an example, going over there, hotel utility costs have actually risen from around 3% of total revenue in 2019, which is like 6 years ago, to about 3.3% a couple of years ago, which might sound small, right? But when you multiply it across hundreds of rooms, high occupancy months, volatile energy markets, it's a significant impact on the bottom line. So what this tells us is that energy and water efficiency in particular, they're not just environmental initiatives anymore, they're ROI initiatives. Every liter of water you save, every kilowatt hour reduced goes straight, I would say, into margin protection. Like if you look at commercial water efficiency interventions alone, it can cut operating costs by around 11%, which I think is quite significant in a low margin industry like hospitality. NABERS, bringing this back to NABERS, this is where NABERS is powerful because it transforms some of these savings into a verifiable performance story. I think hotels can't simply say we're efficient. Government buyers, investors, who are my favorite stakeholder group, corporate clients, they're expecting measurable, auditable evidence of efficiency gains. And so the NABERS ratings really provides that independent validation. It helps your properties prove that improvements are real and not just marketing claims. At the same time, regulatory pressure is also building. In Australia, we already know this energy reporting, this thing called emissions disclosure that everyone seems to be talking about, government procurement standards, they're all tightening a little bit. So I guess we're seeing a very clear direction of travel. If you want to access, to premium clients, if you want government contracts or ESG or environment, social governance driven investors, it's really about showing that credible data on performance. So just go to the next slide, Jess, please, if you don't mind. We kind of spoke a little bit about cost and regulation as some motivators. I think another driver comes from the market itself, from the people that hotels actually want to attract. So your corporate buyers, procurement teams, investors. There's a very clear shift in the way corporate travel and procurement decisions are being made for years. And, I've been very unfortunate to spend 22 years in the space. I'm just kidding, tongue in cheek. I've loved every minute I've spent in the space, but sustainability has generally been a bit of a nice to have in supplier evaluations, maybe even a bonus point on a tender. And we all like bonus points, but today I think it's a bit more of a deciding factor. There's surveys out there that show between 45% and 65% of corporate travel and procurement professionals actually now actively actively include sustainability as a weighted criteria in supplier selection. So as a hotel, when you're competing for government contracts, corporate contracts, you're not just competing on price, location, or service quality. You're also now competing on proof of performance. Procurement teams, investors, they're no longer just accepting like broad claims, we're environmentally conscious or we recycle. They actually want, again, that verifiable data, that independent certification. Again, this is where NABERS, again, bringing it back, becomes a bit of a competitive advantage. That measurable, trusted evidence that a hotel is operating efficiently, managing its footprint. It's really that difference between saying we're sustainable and being able to say we're NABERS 5-star rated, saving, whatever, X tons of emissions and Y dollars per year. From an investor perspective, that trend is just as strong, right? You look at institutional investors, real estate funds, corporate owners, also under growing ESG pressure themselves. So they're looking at that portfolio, hotel portfolios, not just in terms of occupancy and yield, but also in terms of your energy intensity, your carbon exposure, your climate resilience. So if you don't have that credible data or even an improvement plan, these are risks being marked as a sustainability kind of liability. So I guess what's happening is that sustainability is being monetized, not through idealism, but actually through procurement and investment filters. So I think for hotels, that means every rating, NABERS rating, every performance improvement is not just a technical metric. I would call it a sales and investment story. So the takeaway here is really simple. If you can't measure it, you can't sell it. If you can't verify it, you can't win it. And if you can't communicate it, you'll probably get left behind. And again, that's another kind of hook back into why NABERS is so powerful. Just moving to the next slide, please, Jess. The guests. Oh my God, the guests. They're a bit of troublemakers, aren't they? No, I'm just kidding. We all love guests and we need them. So across, I guess, the global travel sector, consumer expectations have shifted dramatically. Sustainability, as you know, right, it's no longer a niche concern. I mean, it depends on which part of the world you're talking to right now, but it is fundamentally a bit of a mainstream value that shapes procurement and purchasing decisions. There's a stat, 83% of travelers, they say sustainable travel is important to them. And this lovely demographic called Gen Z travelers, around 47% of them say they actively worry about, travel's environmental impact. But I think what's even more powerful is that this isn't just what people say, it's actually starting to show up in booking behaviors. More guests are filtering their choices by credentials on sustainability, green certifications. They actually prefer hotels that can demonstrate genuine efforts, whether it's energy efficiency, waste, community impact, etc. So when we look at this younger cohort, millennials, Gen Zs, the trend is intensifying. These generations are now kind of the core of leisure travel and increasingly the decision makers in corporate travel programs, right? So they're what we call purpose-driven consumers, and they fundamentally want to know that the money that they spend supports businesses that reflects their values. So again, when just reinforcing the messaging of sustainability, I think when the messaging is credible, when it's transparent, and when it's backed by data, it actually directly influences your brand trust, your loyalty, the repeat bookings, and that is a huge opportunity for hotels. It's a massive booking differentiator. 20 years ago, forget about it, but today it's a little bit different. So it's not just about being environmentally responsible, it's about standing out in a crowded market, and boy, is the market a little bit crowded at the moment in all things ESG. So just going to the next slide, if you don't mind, Jess. NABERS advantage. So we've seen like some of the things that are driving the change, right? Costs, corporates, customers, etc. The opportunity that brings us all together is what we call the NABERS advantage. Amazing organization, significant impact. I would say you've kind of quietly reshaped how buildings in Australia measure and manage energy and water performance. Kind of what started as a bit of a technical benchmarking tool is now one of the more trusted, government-backed sustainability rating systems in the world. And the results has just been shared through the annual report and other things like, when you track and you improve through NABERS, collectively I think companies have saved hundreds of millions of dollars, in energy bills across commercial property sectors. So I guess from a hotel's point of view, what makes NABERS so valuable? I think first, it turns data into dollars. A high rating isn't just a feel-good, nice, fuzzy, warm outcome. There's a direct correlation to lower energy use, lower costs, often higher asset value. It's quite a tangible proof of efficiency that can be communicated to different stakeholder groups. Second, I would call it credibility. There's so many claims out there, so many marketing claims. The market is flooded with that, and I think a third-party performance-based rating cuts through that noise because it tells your stakeholders this isn't just an opinion, this is independently verified. And then third, it's your continuous improvement, right? Because the ratings are annual. They encourage an ongoing cycle of measurement, management, improvement. So turning this in like from a one-off project ultimately into an embedded business practice. And this comes back to a value that I think is very core to what I do, and very core, I think that's a necessity in what we do, which is accountability. It creates accountability, for operators, for engineers. You identify where efficiencies can still be unlocked. And I think for hotels specifically, NABERS, in addition to all of that, can also be a massive marketing asset, which I've kind of already covered so far. So just next slide, Jess, if you don't mind. And sorry, this is 16 slides, so you're all in this ride with me, whether you like it or not. Right now, I would say the hospitality sector is sitting on a huge untapped opportunity, and the hotel sector as well. If you look at Australia, there's like 6,000 hotels. There's quite a few around. It's not a lot that I've had a NABERS rating. I think that number certainly increased since the last time I looked at the data, but around 1-2% of the market. So if you widen that number to include all reported ratings, we're still at fewer than maybe a couple of hundred hotels nationwide. So for me, on a personal and professional level, the statistic tells me two things. First, it highlights how early we are in the journey. In a manner of speaking, the sector is kind of catching up, but still has a lot of catching up to do to other property classes, shopping centers. We saw a statistic on office buildings. NABERS is already a standard part of doing business in many areas. So what it tells us is there's massive upside potential for hotels that can move early mover advantage. When you secure that rating, you position yourself as a leader, and you set a benchmark for others, etc. NABERS turns hotel operations again into a measurable and marketable asset. So what we mean by that is it transforms your day-to-day activities into a story that you can actually share with your lenders, your customers, your investors. So storytelling, this is so significant in this entire presentation that I'm doing. As I've said many times, instead of just saying you're efficient, you're pointing to verified results, and NABERS rating in this space becomes recognized as a bit of a proxy for risk management, which is a sign that an asset is well run and it's future-proofed against rising energy and carbon costs. We spoke about the procurement team, kind of a qualifying criteria. So I think when you talk about NABERS, what you say about it really matters. It's, again, and I will keep reinforcing this, apologies if I keep repeating myself, it's not just an environmental story, it is an economic opportunity. So just moving to the next slide, Jess, please. Hotels. You all know this. I think you know it's better than me. I just stay in it. I don't really work in one. But hotels are among the most energy-intensive property types, right? So you have that 24/7 operations, heating, cooling, lighting, laundry, etc. So even if you make a small improvement in efficiency, as I started the presentation with today, you can have significantly outsized financial returns. So when you do NABERS aligned assessments, when you do modeling, you can actually see how substantial those gains can be, right? So simulations have been done and practical stuff, but simulations across Australian hotels show that energy savings up to 50%, 50%, right, are actually achievable when a comprehensive package of efficiency measures are actually introduced. So things like HVAC, retrofitting your lighting, optimizing these funnel machines called boilers, fine-tuning your building management controls, BMS, etc. I think that was in one model, improving a property from 4.5 to 5.5 stars. As you can see, delivers roughly like a 53% reduction in energy use. And this aligns with the results, seen in real hotels as well, not just Australia, but, from other countries applying similar sort of energy efficiency initiatives. So in Australia, the power of NABERS is that it gives operators a very clear data-driven roadmap for improvement. So you're not guessing. It's not like a one-off thing. It's about ongoing performance management. And every star increase represents measurable progress. You can see, like, if you have a 1-star improvement in a NABERS energy rating, 20-30% approx drop in energy consumption and costs. And that's the best thing, right? Because what do you get out of that? That's money that going back directly back into your business. So profitability, freeing up capital for guest experience upgrades, supporting other sustainability initiatives. So fundamentally, the takeaway from this slide is operational improvements can also boost resilience. And this is just good operational risk management. Just to the next slide, please, Jess. I would say this slide is probably one of the important ones from today's session because sustainability only drives impact when it's translated into value that decision makers actually understand. That was a strategic pause. I didn't freeze. So in many organizations, technical teams like to speak in kilowatt hours, tons of CO2, liters of water saved. So just coming to my background, 22 years, Big Four consulting, aged care, mining, real estate, private equity, IT. So I worked in a range of different industries. NABERS has kind of come in and out in some of the industries that I worked in. The hardest thing that I've found in my job is selling this up to the executive team and the board sometimes, right? So I think to truly sell NABERS internally or externally, we've got to translate technical language of performance into the commercial language, which is what I like, of business outcomes. So again, this is really like basic stuff. Kilowatt hours equals dollars saved. We already spoke about the 20 to 30% reduction in energy costs, energy use. So if you take like a mid-sized city hotel, that can be like 80 grand, 150 grand, you might save per year. And that resonates, right, with finance teams and owners. If you talk about tons of CO2 avoided, I've seen this in one NABERS report like a long, long time ago. And that was an interesting one, but that can equate into brand value, can equate into guest trust. Each ton that you eliminate represents progress maybe towards net zero goals. Maybe it enhances your reputation. I heard a statistic the other day. What is it? 70% of your valuation like 20 years ago was tangible and 30% was intangible. But today, 70% of a company's value is intangible and 30% is tangible. So that equation has slightly flipped. And ESG, sustainability, NABERS can really kind of hook into that sort of a mindset. When you show verified carbon reductions through NABERS rating, again, just reiterating, reinforcing, what does that help build? It helps build trust, helps your marketing, helps sales teams differentiate your property in this very, very crowded marketplace. So I think the key message of this slide is super simple. Technical achievements only create value when they're communicated in commercial terms, and NABERS can hopefully and potentially and does give you that conversion tool, right? Taking engineering data and converting into financial outcomes, because whether we like it or not, money talks. Just the next slide, please, Jess. This is my other favorite topic, something called risk. Like all asset-heavy businesses, hotels face rising exposure to water scarcity, energy price volatility, tightening climate regulation, and NABERS can be quite a cool thing, right? Quite a cool vehicle to mitigate some of those risks because you actually get very clear visibility on your performance, helps you establish a baseline for improvement, control over resource use, etc. So just briefly, reducing exposure to rising utility costs. What did I mean by that? So when energy and water prices fluctuate, efficiency becomes almost like a built-in hedge. So if you're a well-performing, well-oiled, NABERS-rated hotel machine, the operating is a bit more predictable, hopefully more profitable with lower cost sensitivity, and that stability is particularly attractive to investors and operators who need to manage profit margins in uncertain markets. And having worked in the private equity space, this could be a slight headache if this doesn't go in that direction. NABERS can prepare hotels, I think, for climate-related this thing called AASB S2 that might be floating around, disclosures and regulations. So we're entering this era, or you're kind of already entered it, right? Mandatory reporting in climate-related stuff, and I use stuff loosely there, but it's going to require you to measure, manage, and report on 3 scopes of emissions, dare I say 4 at some point. So having NABERS data means maybe even 5, but having NABERS data means you already have kind of part of that story, which is a good thing. And the third one is supporting broader ESG reporting requirements, as you can see there. Many hotel groups, as I've seen you publish sustainability reports, you may be part of parent entities listed on global exchanges. So ratings can provide the quantitative backbone that those reports need. As you may know, there are 600 plus ESG rating agencies around the world that download your reports and give you a score, good, bad, ugly, and then investors, banks, institutional investors, private equity, they will look at that and decide, kind of where their capital is going. So that's another, I think, opportunity from a risk mitigation point of view, and also opportunity identification perspective. The last one here that I wanted to call out is there's also a business continuity dimension. Hotels, I think, and any organization for that matter, that proactively measure and manage their environmental impact, you're less likely to be blindsided by new standards, by potential carbon price or investor exclusions. And having spent time in mining, this has been tattooed in my head around risk mitigation and compliance. So NABERS can also help future-proof your operations. I see this as almost like an insurance policy against both operational and reputational risk. Very briefly, and I have absolutely no idea how I'm going on time, but Jess, would you mind just going to the next slide, please? I've literally got like 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Amazing. 2 case studies, and I know we're going to talk more about case studies, which is why I probably don't want to go into this in too much detail, if you don't mind, but just from some of the research I've done and lots of examples out there, Holiday Inn Express, and I'm referring to the one here, I'm based here in Melbourne, and it's one across the road. How this is an example of how a developer strategically builds sustainability into the project from day one. No retrofitting later and treating energy efficiency as an afterthought, but it was actually designed for performance. Setting a high NABERS target during the planning stage. It required a bit of an initial capital outlay, 860 grand to be precise. It's not a small number, but very clear business case was made in mind, and it was to try and get a higher NABERS energy rating, which equated to operational savings, resilience, all that stuff that we just spoke about. Annual energy savings, about 80 grand a year. Payback period, which is a bit long, but 10 years in just that one space. But that's before factoring in ongoing benefits, right? Like maintenance costs, higher asset value, stronger appeal to ESG investors, etc. So this is a really good case study about that long-term commercial advantage that we spoke about earlier. And also another element of how early investment can create compounding returns. I would say NABERS aligned CapEx isn't necessarily a cost. I would call it a capital strategy. Future-proofing your assets, improving profitability, and ensuring that that your property is attractive not just to the guests, but also to your investors for years to come. The next slide. I think, yes, it's on Mercure Sydney. Another standout story. This is that, I guess, the reason I put this in here is it proves that even existing hotels, not just new builds, can actually achieve quite dramatic results. Lots of upgrades, things that you already know about, like insulation, glazing, building management schedules, really tightening that, thinking about your lighting, etc. I don't think any of the changes were really very flashy. They were very, very practical, and they were very data-driven type interventions that was closely aligned with the NABERS methodology, but the outcome was super cool. And you've got the data there, like 43% energy reduction in usage, 5-star, etc. Right? So I guess this really, what it illustrates is another critical lesson about efficiency improvements really compounding over time. Once you have your systems in place, the savings repeat every year. It's amazing. It's like investing, right? Like Warren Buffett. So energy prices keep rising, but the savings keep repeating, which is beautiful to a CFO, CEO, whoever it might be. So just moving to the next slide, because this is the fun bit. If it hasn't already been very fun for all of you, objections. Story of my life. Objections. Even when you have all this evidence, even when you know that selling NABERS and sustainability is like, why wouldn't you? You might meet some resistance. What might those resistance be? it's too costly. Oh, it's too costly. It's not a priority right now. Because we have a million other priorities. We're already doing enough. We've got some panels up on the roof and there's some trees that's being planted there. That's plenty. We go and volunteer time with some charities. So I think, what does this actually mean? If we start with cost, when someone says sustainability initiatives are expensive, I think the best response that I would say is compared to what? Because doing nothing actually carries its own costs, right? And we've just spoken about that: utility bills, inefficiency in operations, corporate contracts, scope 3, etc. The reality, I think, is that energy efficiency measures nearly always pay for themselves. Second, not a priority. Simple. The art of negotiation. It's actually about reframing. Sustainability is not an add-on project. It's a business improvement strategy. And I think we get that in this audience, I think this crowd. So I don't know if I want to go through that in too much detail. But third, we're already sustainable. And I think that's where data matters. Or data, sorry, if there's any Americans in the audience. This is where measurement matters. Many hotels have good initiatives, recycling, linen reuse, LED lighting. But again, NABERS, the additional lens is that independent validation, turning effort into proof. So thinking from we think we're efficient to actually we can prove it. So second last slide. Next slide, please, Jess, or maybe third last slide. I think once you address the objections, the next step is knowing how to sell NABERS effectively. Not as a compliance tool. Please don't sell it as a compliance tool for those of you who are selling NABERS, but as a story of value and growth. I think the key message is you're not selling stars, you're selling outcomes. So when we position NABERS, I think focusing less on the technical and more on what it means for the customer. Every hotel, every owner, every operator, I think cares about 4 things in particular, in addition to all the other things you might have in your strategic plan: costs, revenue, risk, and reputation. So costs, I would say a higher NABERS rating translates to a lower energy, blah, blah, blah. So immediate measurable ROI. So you can see the arrow kind of going down. Revenue, stronger sustainability profile, conscious travelers being attracted, corporate clients, filling in rooms, winning tenders, etc. Risk can go down, as we already spoke about that. And reputation, I think, can go up if the evidence is credible and if the claims are real. And so just going to now the second last slide. Next slide, please. I
might just give you 1 minute, Kaushik, because we do need to move on to the next one. Thanks.
Thank you, Jess. I am done. I think I just want to finish with this. I think just to reiterate, data, technical language is used quite a bit, but storytelling is really important, right, in the NABERS space, which is to frame results as the before and after stories. So instead of hotel improving 3 to 4 stars, maybe saving 120 grand a year in energy and reinvest into guest amenities, right? So I think it's a very important part of today, which is storytelling for that value proposition. And the last slide is the next slide, which is if you ever wanted to figure out what to say on a 30-second NABERS pitch, there's your 30-second pitch. I don't think I'm going to read from that. I'm done. Thank you so much. I hope that was useful.
Thank you so much, Kaushik. That was really, really helpful. And I hated to cut it short because it is just so interesting. I think the kind of key things I wrote down is money talks, sustainability has the most impact when you transfer it into commercial value, and NABERS can provide that tool to kind of easily communicate that. So yeah, really, really interesting. This has been recorded. So if you do want to rewatch or kind of go back and look at anything, especially this 30-second NABERS pitch, it will be on our YouTube channel. But I am going to move on to our next speakers. So today we're hearing from Diana Rico-Roa from ESG Plus. We've got David Young from Accor, and we've got Mel Maio from Novotel, Ibis, and Melbourne Central, and they're going to be talking to us about a case study. So I will pass straight over to them.
Thanks, Jess. Just the next slide would be great. Hi, everyone. David Young, Head of Sustainability at Accor. I just had 2 quick slides, and then Diana and Mel have got much more detail on the case study. So just to give everyone a bit of an overview of the way Accor thinks about sustainability broadly across our business. Our strategic framework has people and nature at the heart of everything we do. People because our guests, our suppliers, the artists who work with us are critical to our operation, and nature in the terms of the operations where we operate from, whether it's a city location or a resort or a beach location. We draw resources from nature and we interact with nature. And then we look across 3 other lenses: stay, eat, and people and nature. And look, our key focuses are pretty much the same as most hotel groups. removing single-use plastic, driving down our energy consumption and greater introduction of green energy, responsible sourcing, food waste reduction using automated solutions, building out these strategic partnerships. As you mentioned, we've been a key early adopter of NABERS, and we're really keen to see this grow. We're close to 100 hotels between those certified and those in progress, which is fantastic, and really supportive of the relationships that NABERS are forming with people like ecotourism, where we've got just over 250 hotels certified. And water is our other big focus and continued focus as we try and reduce our water consumption across our operations, particularly in our drought-affected areas. So that's our broad strategy. Specifically around NABERS, Jess, if you just do the next page, that'd be great. We have as a core component of our strategy is to reduce our Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 46% at the end of 2030. That's a global strategic goal for Accor. It's also consistent with most of the other big hotel groups who are around the same level. So to do that, we're really focused on emissions, both Scope 1, 2 and 3. I'm dreading 4 and 5 if they come. We're having enough trouble with 3. So first of all is to make our buildings and infrastructure as energy as efficient as possible, which is where this NABERS process and the work we do with Diana and ESG Plus is a big step forward in identifying opportunity. Working with our suppliers to help them reduce their emissions. We are, for many of our guests, a key component of their emissions profiles, and working with our procurement team and green energy suppliers to enhance the level of green energy within our energy mix as we move forward. We know we won't get those targets without a mixture of those 3 things. As I say, we've mandated in our hotels, particularly our larger ones, that we do undertake NABERS audits from FY25 on, which we've started. And so we're between those certified and those in progress, we're around 100, which is fantastic. The 40 plus are already rated, and there's 60 in progress. And the key for us is absolutely, it's a clear, simple, unified process to allow us to understand ways to reduce energy and make our hotels more efficient and rely less on green energy, which is obviously still quite expensive. We started with our premium and mid-scale hotels, so our Pullmans and Novotels, but the team are working through how we broaden that out to our mantra business and some of our more complicated strata type operations. So it's great to see your presentation earlier, Jess, when you talked about some of the work you're going to do for non-standard hotels, because Accor has a lot of them. So it'll be great to get into that space as well. But as we just heard, and we're totally aligned on this, there are significant benefits to owners in reducing energy costs through the gains that we make, and the property valuation will go up. And as NABERS becomes important in the whole of government travel piece and on the roadmap, it's a clear thing for us to see as one of our 2 core certifications. We see eco certification and NABERS as 2 critical independent measures of how we're performing as a hotel group. So we're really excited to be part of this process and want to keep it moving forward. And we're committing ourselves to getting as much of our network, 400 plus hotels, onto NABERS over the next couple of years that we can. So I'll pass to Diana, I think, next.
Thank you, David, for that. Good morning to all, and thank you for having me. My name is Diana Rico-Roa, and I'm the founder and director of ESG Plus, and I've been a NABERS assessor for the past 15 years. For the past 4 years, I'm supporting the NABERS team as a supervisor for the program, as well as a level 2 auditor for NABERS New Zealand. Next slide, please. Yes. A little bit about us. I've created ESG Plus 5 years ago to help our clients benchmark, improve, and communicate their sustainability journey, and to give them independent advice. I'm personally very passionate about hotels and embedding sustainability into the hotel ethos and operations. So from the beginning, we have focused on hotels and on understanding the complexities of these sectors, and aim to create practical sustainability business cases to facilitate progress. Our team of 5 have been compounding knowledge in the sector thanks to over 70 hotels and accommodation providers who trust us as partners in their sustainability journey. Next. All right, so as a hotel operator, Accor is ahead of the curve on sustainability. They are the only operator in Australia with a public NABERS commitment. So in around 2024, on a voluntary basis, they pledged to rate the portfolio by 2026. And this is not an easy task because we're talking about a large and diverse portfolio with multiple owners and, of course, budget constraints. However, the early voluntary commitment looks to have worked out very well. As Jess mentioned, last month, the Australian federal government announced the expansion of the mandatory commercial business disclosure scheme, which will soon apply to the accommodation sector. This means Accor's leadership bought their hotels some time, avoiding playing catch up. Next. And of course, Accor comprises a broad range of brands and even broader range of hotel owners. And the ownership structure can indeed be different from hotel to hotel. Accor, as the operator, needs the support of the owner to proceed with any substantial project that has to do with asset management or sustainability. So this can prove to be a great challenge. Next. There are other challenges as well. I just brought you to some very generic because each hotel comes with its own set of challenges. But as mentioned, different ownership structures can make it very difficult to access important data or even important areas of hotel buildings. Because of the varieties in brands and hotels is so wide, the operational needs are not consistent across all properties. And sometimes we run into unusual configurations, such as hotels within hotels, hotels in hospital precincts, hotels that shares a building with Bunnings. In some hotels, buildings have multiple rooms with multiple owners, some permanent residents, and some rooms management change year on year. And other have very complex shared services. So we really have to go and use our compounding knowledge to assess these buildings because this is very different to what you see in the office space or retail. It's its own thing. And buildings with ongoing disputes with builders that goes beyond Accor's control, but inevitably results in poor performance outcomes. So those are quite challenging. Some hotels have large and popular restaurants. For example, they could have a brewery, which have a lot of customers that are not hotel guests, but this will have an impact on the NABERS score. And of course, there are challenges in the whole accommodation industry, such as high turnover of staff, reliance on external contractors, language barriers, or limited resources. Next. This brings me to the opportunities. So by starting early and planning long-term while acting short-term, a hotel will be in a competitive position when the mandate kicks in, So by starting early, operators can influence also the NABERS tool. So Jess mentioned earlier today that they're listening to the industry. And this is very important because if right now you're going through a NABERS rating, you are able to present your particular situation so NABERS can take it into consideration in a future revision. So yeah, the NABERS rules might not be perfect, but it needs data to get better. Yeah, so it's a two-way stream. The other part is that we also have found NABERS to be an excellent asset management tool. And it's a great opportunity to find improvements because you need to go on site and inspect your hotel, speak with your contractors and key personnel. And then you can go on and create meaningful improvement plans. And by becoming NABERS versed, your teams can actually factor in NABERS into the decision making. So for example, you can actually consider what NABERS will look like before you implement a submetering project. And these are very expensive projects, so you really want to get them right from the beginning and just future-proof your property. NABERS also give you a competitive advantage in sales. So Kaushik, you already covered about this, and this is very important because revenue is very important for hotels. And with a NABERS rating, you have a reliable third-party certification, which we know are in demand with savvy travelers. It reduces greenwashing risks, and also it allows your hotel to line up with government requirements and appear in government or corporate traveler procurement lists. Next slide, Jess, please. Another opportunity is taking advantage of the current grants available to measure and reduce the carbon footprint in the accommodation sector, as this will not be around forever. The availability of money is usually there when this is on a voluntary basis, but with mandates around the corner, we know these resources are going to go away at some point. So please feel free to scan this code. Happy to send you some resources that we have on this just to help you improve your hotel. Next slide, please. So I just brought you a couple of case studies from Accor-operated hotels. This one is the Novotel Melbourne Collins. We've been rating this hotel for 5 years now, and still it is not about the star rating. You know, it's actually about using NABERS as an asset management tool and as a way to help you simplify decisions. So this site is very complex because you have a mixed-use building where there is a hotel and a retail area and different owners, but some areas have shared services and responsibilities. So NABERS have been a great tool to actually communicate what needs to be done between the operator and different owners, just simplifying these complex decisions. It helped clarify and justify the submitting system requirements to separate the shared services so the hotel can have a more accurate NABERS rating and just have a better consumption and emissions tracking. And gave strength to the business case to approve major HVAC upgrades. So the photos on the left are from the day of that the hotel finally got a new chiller from the Premier Wing. And so far, the hotel has completed mechanical ventilation upgrades, lift replacements, and a couple of lighting upgrades as part of the improvement plan. And at the moment, they're continuing to work on the 2024 NABERS Action Plan, where there's like a comprehensive list of about 40 recommendations of what they can do. Next slide, please.
I'm just going to quickly jump in and say we've only got a couple of minutes left of the actual meeting. So if for anyone on the call, they can't stay past 12 o'clock, please put your messages in the Q&A and we'll try and get back to you. We're going to kind of keep going through till these presentations finish. But yeah,
Right.
I'm going to hand back over to you, Diana.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jess. So the second case study is the Novotel and Ibis Melbourne Central. So this is an example of a hotel that started to get rated in 2025. And a particularity of this site is that this one is a dual branded hotel. So what is a dual branded hotel? Is when you have one building and you have two brands that are run in the same building. And the brands are actually sharing the facilities, but each brand have their distinct rates and experiences. So what does this mean from a NABERS perspective? Well, when you come across a building like this, you actually have to approach it case by case. In this particular case, the whole is rated as a single building, as the ownership structure and the services are the same, as the dual branding is only for sales and marketing strategy. So these are an example of the complexities that you can come across with the hotel sector that is very different to other sectors. Next slide, please, Jess. So the first NABERS rating for this hotel resulted in a 4-star with a progressive metric of 4.1 star, which is a great result indicating high performance. The renewable energy indicator is resulting in 12% because it's only reflecting the renewable energy target and state territory targets. There is actually a small 5 kilowatt solar PV system on the roof, but it's lying flat and there's no connection to the inverter. So we went and had a look and there's sufficient space to actually put in there a larger solar system. So that was part of our recommendations, just to have a solar feasibility study, just to see how can they maximize that roof space available, and also to have access to the solar inverter portal. So this data can actually be used for NABERS purposes. Next slide. When it comes to water, the hotel got a 3.5 star with a 3.7 star progressive metric, which places between market standard and high performance. It's very interesting, the water part. In general, across the portfolio, the water audit findings have been very interesting, but that deserves its own webinar because it's a series of things that we were not expecting. But today, what I'll do is share a video about the Novotel, Ibis, and Melbourne Central, because Accor is quite committed to improve its water performance, and it's become an essential part of these audits. Next slide, please. So the results are now available publicly. You can find them in the NABERS website. In the NABERS website, you'll see that it shows the star rating. And this is the information that can be extracted by the government and corporate travel procurement sites, so they can be listed and serve its purpose. This also goes into Google Hotels. As you can see, the Google Hotels indicates the hotel has been independently audited. It indicates that it has a NABERS energy and water rating, but it does not show the star rating. Yeah, because at this time, it's about you committing to having a NABERS rating, a third-party certification. It's not about the star rating. So it's about your commitment to start this journey. And yeah, next slide, please. I think I'm gonna move on into the video. So this is a video for the Novotel Ibis and Melbourne Central, sorry, and is done by the Hearties. That's how Accor calls his staff member. It focuses on water conservation because, as they say, every drop counts. So please play the video, Jess.
Welcome to Novotel and Ibis Melbourne Central. We're going to win hardest race to reduce because
every drop counts.
Every drop counts.
Every drop counts.
Our focus is on sustainability here. We've got an incredible team which we're going to take you through with all our amazing practices that we do.
Hi, I'm Mel Maio. I'm the Sustainability Champion for Novotel and Ibis Melbourne Central. Every drop we save ensures we reduce our environmental footprint and makes us more sustainable. Our relentless obsession on site to do things smarter and better has led us to focus on things, particular high water usage areas, that we can make small changes to that have a big impact. We are fortunate that we have infrastructure in place that measure water consumed in all parts of our building. So the drains that we had on the rooftop, they make that water makes its way into these pipes that come here, go across and into the top of our tanks where water is collected and stored. This water subsequently gets used to flush our common area toilets on levels 3, 2 and 1. One area that we've changed significantly is increasing capacity of storage for our rainwater tanks. By increasing our tank capacity, we've managed to reduce domestic water consumption by up to 1,200 litres per day. We are currently working on a CapEx plan to actually connect the excess water that we've got in these tanks to some of the guest room toilets as well.
Come follow me. So this is the place where we get our rainwater that we use to water our plant every day in the hotel. Housekeeping. Hi, my name is Jignesh. I'm executive housekeeper in Novotel Ibis Melbourne Central. Our housekeeping team has fully embraced water smart cleaning.
We also use recycled rainwater for scrubbing and cleaning the hotel driveways, as well as other public spaces, helping us reduce freshwater use across the property.
What if I told you that the small disk can actually change our lives? The engineering team has rolled out shower reducers in every room, cutting shower flows from 8.5 liters to 6 liters per minute. That's over 30% reduction. With 483 rooms fitted, that's a significant volume of water saved.
At Projibo, sustainability starts in our kitchen, where every ingredient, action and choice matters.
For our guests, we make sustainability easy.
Together, our team has proven that each small change adds up to make a big difference.
At Novotel and Ibis Melbourne Central, we believe that water is our lifeblood.
Every drop counts.
Well, thank you for that, Jess. Thank you so much for that, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And now I'll pass it on to Mel Maio, the Chief Engineer at the Novotel and Ibis Melbourne Central. So over to you, Mel. Hey, Mel.
Thanks very much, Diana. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we are a dual branded hotel. Basically, as Diana said, we're one building that's divided. The top half of the building is Novotel and the bottom half of the building is Ibis. So one building, one electricity meter, one gas meter and one water meter. So we divide those, or we allocate those across the different brands that we have. You heard from the team just then in the video, 483 rooms in total, and they all use water, electricity, and no gas in the rooms, but we use that across the building in different areas. Sustainability and energy efficiency has been a major focus of ours for many years. We started working closer together with our BMS partner, the people who look after our building management system, and we created a monitoring and measuring report that captures where we're using water, gas and electricity. We're quite fortunate. We're a fairly new building and we had a lot of meters in place that weren't being used effectively, if I can use that term, until we started measuring and managing those bits of information that we already had. Once we had that baseline, we started targeting areas that were high consumption areas in order to see where we could have an impact on the resources being consumed. And then we started fine-tuning that equipment. We have on-site heating and cooling is where we started, and without having any negative effect on our customer base, we managed to have a significant reduction in consumption of the average energy used per guest in house. So we started measuring, we tuned, we measured again, and we keep tuning. So we're continuously looking for areas where we can have an impact. The next step was undertaking a NABERS audit, which happened in June this year. So like most of the buildings, and I'm thinking other hotels will be in this same mindset, we thought we were doing everything right. However, having an independent person come in and look at what we have and what we're doing, it was definitely a bit of a light bulb moment for us. The things that Diana looked at and was able to pick up and suggest changes or alternatives to change the way we do things. So you saw some of the examples in the video specifically about water. We were cleaning rooms in a way that was allowing water to just wash down the drain and be wasted. Now that volume of water has been significantly reduced. We installed some LED lighting in storerooms and plant rooms and put sensors on them, replacing T5 fluoro tubes. So the amount of energy consumed is going to be reduced. And even having air conditioning units running in the lift motor room. We've got 2 independent units up there. They were both switched on all the time. Over the cooler months, there's absolutely no need to run them. And so we've only got one running at the moment. That might change coming into summer, but there's a significant period of Melbourne weather where we don't need 2 units running. The video you just saw focused on water and our tagline of every drop counts, and that's certainly true. However, undertaking NABERS gives us a much broader and encompasses all energy used on site, making it a valuable investment from my perspective, and looking at a cost-effective way to justify CapEx projects moving forward. Diana mentioned solar. We're currently creating a CapEx plan so we can expand our 5 kilowatt system to something much larger. We've got plenty of rooftop space that we can utilise and is underutilised at the moment. So having that as a cultural change in our business and that continuous improvement thought process is where we are, and I think where we all need to be. That's it from me.
Thank you, Mel. That was fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So over to you, Jess, and thank you for having us today.
Great. Thank you so much for presenting. I hope you've all enjoyed the presentations today. I've really enjoyed that, and that video of the Novotel and Ibis. It was really, really great. It's nice to see kind of the people there who are working at that hotel kind of really involved in that. It was a really, really great video. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A section, which we are going to send responses to, but just because it is 12:10 and we were meant to finish about 10 minutes ago, we're going to not answer them now. The last things I will kind of share with you are if you are interested in any funding opportunities. I know firstly Diana had some a grant link there, but there are some other funding opportunities that are available, such as some of those energy saving schemes that are operating across different states. So we've got some in New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and ACT, which is really exciting. And on the right-hand side, you can see some of those savings as well. So there's lots of opportunities to kind of increase the commercial value of your NABERS ratings. Additionally, for New South Wales, there's an energy metering and monitoring grant that has just become available. So this will be, we can send around a link for this if you're interested. It'll also be up on the recording, so you can come back and take a look at it. And then I think the final thing I had to say was that the NABERS API is going to be launched on the 4th of December, and there is a webinar for that. So if you would like to join, please do. The API is really, really cool, so we really encourage you to join. Thank you so much for joining today. That is the full presentation, full webinar. It will be uploaded onto our NABERS YouTube channel, and we will send around an email once that has been uploaded. So thank you so much again for joining today. We hope you found it useful, and have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.